The ghost with the most is back with an all-new movie, so what better time to dig up the decaying corpses of his handful of video game appearances? The original movie from 1988 is near and dear to my heart since I was a kid, so playing through this rambunctious assortment of titles has been an amusement park ride of emotions, trying to discover if we've got Beetle gems or Beetle jank. So let's check out every Beetlejuice game. It's showtime! Beetlejuice made his video game debut in July of 1990 with Adventures of Beetlejuice: Skeletons in the Closet, released only on MS-DOS. It was published by High-Tech Expressions, who are primarily known for releasing games on many platforms targeted to a younger audience and utilizing well-known IPs like Sesame Street and Barbie, but also have a few rather notorious DOS games on their resume like their takes on Mega Man and Street Fighter II. Development duties here were handled by frequent collaborator Rydell Software Productions, a name you might recognize in case you saw my video on every Gremlins game, as they made a pretty abysmal Gremlins 2 top-down action game for DOS as well. Now, I had never played Skeletons in the Closet before putting this project together, but when I saw RSP was involved and this had a similar look to it, I was rightfully going in with pretty low expectations, but was actually very surprised by how fun this game was in the end. Instead of adapting from the original film, this gets its source material from the Beetlejuice animated series, which started in 1989 and ran for 4 seasons, and even more specifically the 3rd episode, also titled Skeletons in the Closet, a classic morality tale about dishonesty, where every lie told adds another skeleton to the closet, and the only way to be rid of them is to tell the truth. That concept is gamified here in an arcade-style single-screen top-down shooter with 250 stages, putting you in control of Beetlejuice, and with Lydia's help, you'll need to clear each warped and wavy screen of its skeletons in order to move on to the next one. You start with a basic loogie spitting attack that can be fired in 8 directions, which can reduce a skeleton to a temporary pile of bones, and from there you'll need to guide the AI-driven Lydia to clean up the mess for good. If Lydia happens to touch an active skeleton, she'll be imprisoned in a cage until you can pick up a lightning bolt item, which is randomly dropped by a downed skeleton. The window of time before the skeleton reassembles itself is rather short, and then can even become faster and have more health when they respawn, so you'll need to strategically take them down from a closer distance and hope that Lydia heads in the direction that you want, and as the number of skeletons increase as you progress, things can naturally get rather hectic, not to mention the fact that Beetlejuice dies in one hit from any contact with an enemy. Beetlejuice's initial weapon is painfully limited to 1 shot on the screen at a time, but luckily the skeletons can drop other weapon power-ups as well, including a rapid fire upgrade allowing for more on-screen projectiles at a time, a shot that can fire in all 8 directions simultaneously, and even an attack that sends Beetlejuice's disembodied head across the screen, returning to you like a boomerang. The curved pathing of the skeletons, along with your curved movement along the screen, adds a surprising amount of nuance to various attack methods depending on your current weapon, especially considering that if you take down several enemies at once, Lydia is likely to be heading towards a pile of bones that's too far away for her to clean up in time, and your situation will worsen. Another helpful mechanic is eating bugs, which randomly grants you one of 5 letters needed to spell the word truth, which effectively reduces every skeleton on the screen to a permanent pile of bones, giving Lydia plenty of time to do her thing. If you play your cards right, you can quickly clear a difficult stage this way, or get yourself out of a tight spot. And to up the challenge even further, a few other enemies join in the fun, from sandworms that periodically pop up out of the ground and eat you if you're standing still for too long, and also other characters roving around from the animated series, like Ginger the tap-dancing spider, and the monster from across the street. Luckily, none of these guys can harm Lydia, but they'll still kill Beetlejuice in one hit, and they can't be taken down by your attacks either. And with the game's previously mentioned 250 levels, which gradually get more and more populated with enemies, this game gets brutally difficult. You start with 3 lives and can earn more as you gain more points, but there's no direct continues. Fortunately, there is at least a password system, which gives a password every 10 levels from 1 to 100, and then a password every 20 levels from then on. However, loading a password starts you with the weakest weapon, so you'll always be scrambling to get a decent power-up right off the bat, which is no easy task on the later stages. Overall, I actually had a lot of fun messing with this one. It's like a fresh take on something like the arcade classic Robotron, but with some pretty unique gameplay mechanics in the mix with Lydia and the various enemy types. It does play a bit clunky and choppy. It is an old DOS game after all. But as is, it would probably be way too hard if the speed was any higher. It would honestly be super cool to see an updated take on the overall concept and balance out the difficulty a bit with smoother performance. Presentation-wise, I did dig the overall surreal and colorful look of the warped Netherworld screens in glorious EGA, but there isn't a ton of variety there, other than some solid-looking full-screen pixel art very much in line with the art style of the cartoon. In the sound department, it's PC speaker only, just some bleeps and blorps here. Regardless, if you like this style of arcade game, I definitely suggest grabbing this one off of your abandonware site of choice and giving it a try. And if you're still in need of a little more Beetlejuice on DOS goodness, this isn't exactly a game, but High-Tech Expressions also released some print kit software in case you feel like firing up the old dot matrix printer and making some spooky stationery. And now we'll get into what might be the most well-known and somewhat infamous Beetlejuice video game, Beetlejuice on the Nintendo Entertainment System, an often maligned title that has been lambasted over the years by internet critics, myself included, with a rushed and careless review of the game I made for an old job over 12 years ago. But now, with an open mind and more appreciation for things that are strange and unusual, there is some pretty cool and unique stuff going on in this game, although admittedly rather confusing and unforgiving at times. The NES version of Beetlejuice was published by LJN in 1991, a publisher also often picked on for their hit-or-miss takes on beloved licensed properties, although I'd argue the inconsistent qualities of their titles were usually attributed to whoever they outsourced the actual game development to. Here they would bring on Rare as the development team, who they had also previously collaborated with on their Roger Rabbit and Nightmare on Elm Street NES games, and a company that would go on to prominence in the 90s with hit games like Battletoads, Donkey Kong Country, GoldenEye, and lots more. Pulling more inspiration from the original film than the cartoon series, you're put in control of Beetlejuice in a mostly side-scrolling platformer where you're tasked with scaring the Dietz family out of the home of the recently deceased Maitlands, with the ultimate goal of reaching the real afterlife and kissing this millennium goodbye. It starts out with the typical run-and-jump action you might expect, although you may quickly discover a quirky camera that doesn't scroll up or down unless you have both feet on the ground, and falling to the bottom of the screen will cost you a life regardless of there being any solid ground below or not. Even after you grab the first key and open the garage door to get in the house, first-time players will likely get obliterated by these instantly appearing fatal beams of light. But with enough persistence, you'll start to get into a recurring gameplay loop of obtaining a necessary item to make progress, in this first instance being the iconic handbook, until making your way back outside. From here, you'll encounter another quirky game mechanic, as you'll find that Beetlejuice can't directly attack anything in his basic form, as the B button just stomps on the ground, which is only helpful for crushing these tiny harmless bugs jumping around. Each successful Beetle Stomp, along with dispatching some of the other enemies in the game, will earn you a certain amount of help vouchers, a currency that can be used in these frequently occurring, recently deceased information booths, where you can purchase a variety of scares, each with their own unique character sprites. Using a scare will transform you and then give you a certain number of projectiles you can attack enemies and bosses with, or sometimes special abilities like being able to jump higher as the Birdman, or being immune to bees as the Skeleton, which is required to meet the game's first boss, the spray can wielding Otho. Boss fights are a bit strange in this game, as they all just move slowly forward and shoot at you, and can only be defeated by knocking them back into the far right edge of the screen with your shots. So if you're lacking enough scares to accomplish this, you'll need to start the level over again. So yeah, it's a bit punishing and potentially confusing right from the start, even more so if you haven't read the game manual, which does a pretty good job of supplying info about the scares, along with a few other hints to get started. But with enough perseverance and currency grinding, you might make your way through the initial village and sewer levels, eventually making your way into the Maitland's house, which not only ramps up the difficulty, but switches up the perspective into a top-down view. The scare items you bought previously sadly can't be used here to defend yourself, so instead you'll be searching through storage boxes for scare potions, which when thrown, unleash an erratic DVD logo-ass ghost that hopefully does what you want it to. And in the meantime, you'll need to meet some kind of requirement to move on to the next room, which is usually either finding a key, scaring off enough enemies in the room, or picking up a necessary item to shoo away various members of the Dietz family who may be blocking your path. Throw in a few deadly auto-scrolling sections, awkward hammer combat moments, and even doors that warp you to a sandworm-infested penalty stage on Saturn, and you've got an experience that will surely test your resolve and patience for jank. Eventually, you might finally find yourself in the second half of the game, traversing through the model graveyard, featuring the most precarious side-scrolling platforming we've seen so far here, picking up an important box of chalk, and then making our way into another top-down level in the attic, which luckily isn't as expansive as level 3 was, but instead mostly consists of a warp door maze. And then finally, you will reach the afterlife waiting room, where you must take a number, or 6 of them actually, to finally gain admittance to whatever awaits us after we die. Hopefully it's not just this pixelated face staring at us for eternity. So I don't know if this rudimentary overview will inspire anyone to give this generally misunderstood game a chance or not, but hopefully someone out there gives it another shot like I did. The variety of gameplay and quirky mechanics certainly makes for a unique challenge, and fans of the original movie might appreciate a very valiant effort of including so many locations, characters, and references packed into this. The graphics are solid enough to get the point across, although I'm not sure whose idea it was to put a flickering HUD so far into the center of the screen. And while you won't hear a cool 8-bit rendition of Danny Elfman's memorable movie theme, composer David Wise still gave us a fantastic soundtrack here, as he often does in his vast body of work. Overall, I'd say not to get too scared off by this one at first, and hopefully you really try to turn on the juice and see what shakes loose. The following year would see LJN and Rare teaming up again to summon up a handheld version of our beloved Bioexorcist with a release on the Game Boy in 1992, Beetlejuice Horrific Hijinks from the Netherworld. This time around they would return to using the cartoon series as the source material, where Beetlejuice must rescue Lydia from the clutches of the four-armed Astorath, traversing the Dietz's home, a nearby graveyard, and eventually through a gateway into the dangerous Netherworld itself. We've got another platformer on our hands here, although Beetlejuice now has a magical koosh ball projectile thing that you have unlimited use of, as you blast away a variety of ghosts and fiends in your path, some of which have even possessed the household's dinnerware and dirty laundry. Each of the game's stages has a bit of a gimmick to it as well, with the first level in the house having a handful of rooms that must either be cleared of enemies and a mini-boss within, along with a variety of mini-games that must be completed, including a pipe dream-esque tile puzzle, and building the ugliest, scariest face you can, or catching big water droplets. Once you've done all of that, you can get into the attic, where you'll need to wrangle these cute number muncher guys into boxes, along with guiding bedsheet ghosts into self-immolation. There are also a handful of mini-games here to gain some extra lives, but they're optional this time around, and won't need to be completed to open up the window in the roof to make your way outside. And honestly, this whole stage is optional. To my speedrunner brain's delight, if you jump in the right spot, you can simply clip through the roof and finish level 2 in a few seconds. The next gimmick tasks you with pushing around numbered gargoyle statues onto their corresponding pedestal through a fairly large graveyard area, even sometimes enlisting the help of Great Huge Baby. Yes, that is his real name. Some of the statue placements are also accompanied by timed concentration card games, matching pairs of cards featuring various characters from the cartoon or other random ghouls. and upon placing the 8th and final statue, you open up a passageway to the Netherworld, which of course is reachable by minecart. Donkey Kong Country, eat your heart out. Now things are really feeling like an early 90s Rare developed game, where the difficulty spikes up into near Battletoads levels of trial and error brutality. And did I mention there are no continues? On top of the tightly timed minecart navigation, you'll also get into all sorts of precise platforming with deadly spikes all over the place, and even some disappearing Yoku block situations. And if you have enough gumption and extra lives to spare, you'll get to the ultimate challenge, the slide puzzle. And if that wasn't enough pain for you, your last task is riding a bouncing pogo snake through a gauntlet of spikes and water hazards, requiring highly precise timing of your jumps and momentum. The game is truly not messing around anymore at this point, but at least in some semblance of mercy, there is an extra life near the end of the stage before the section's most difficult obstacles. And then finally, the showdown with Astaroth, a creepy giant demon face with 4 arms. I guess I can see why this nightmare fuel wasn't part of the kids' cartoon. So you'll just simply blow his arms off, shoot him in the mouth, and bam, Lydia is freed. Overall, I guess I should say I was a bit surprised at how much fun I had playing this one, as I hadn't really given it a proper playthrough until starting to do this video. Although admittedly, I can't say this game is for everyone. The minigames add a lot of variety into the mix, but at the same time their randomized nature can start to lose their appeal upon multiple attempts of the game, which you will absolutely need in order to memorize and learn the unforgiving Netherworld stages. The graphics can be hit or miss as well, and the intensely flashing lighting effects in certain parts are pretty obnoxious, especially if you're photosensitive or playing this on a larger screen. David Wise came through with a solid soundtrack again on this one, albeit being more light-hearted and whimsical overall compared to the NES game score. It sometimes feels a bit out of place. Now, despite its flaws, I still definitely dig this game, and I've even put some effort into speedrunning it, and I'll drop a link to my latest PB in the description if you feel like checking it out. And before we move on to Beetlejuice's more contemporary gaming appearances, it's worth mentioning he had one more handheld game iteration with his very own Tiger Handheld. Unfortunately, I've no means to try this one out myself, as it's seemingly quite rare and has yet to be playable in an emulator like many other LCD handheld games. And even at the time of making this video, the only copy of this on eBay is new old stock, still sealed in the package, and listed at $999. Notably, this would be the only game that has you playing as Lydia, with a call button for summoning Beetlejuice, and a pick button for grabbing items in the Shocking Mall, Peeves Peach Shop, and the Grocery Store. Now, in more recent years, Beetlejuice has started to pop up in the gaming world again, including his own stage and minifigure set for the Toys to Life game LEGO Dimensions in 2017. If you haven't seen this before, it's your bog-standard LEGO action game, but with loads of real-life figures from various Warner Brothers franchises, which you can purchase, build, and then activate on a toy pad to play as these characters in-game or unlock new areas. It's admittedly more fun than it should be, and the Beetlejuice content is actually pretty cool, with various locations and fully voiced characters from the original film, and plenty of little quests and golden bricks to collect. I mean, who wouldn't want to ride around Saturn on a sandworm like this? It's too cute. And more recently, with the unstoppable hype machine surrounding the film sequel finally coming out, Beetlejuice has also found himself in an official Roblox experience. Now, I'll admit that I don't know much about Roblox, other than they seem to make absolute bank off of the hard work of small children, but I begrudgingly installed it anyway to take a look at this. Now, the environments they've built here are actually kinda cool, but as expected, there's a huge focus on collecting tokens to unlock rewards, and any actual gameplay is mostly just running around, picking up different colored keys to open different colored doors, and trying not to get arrested? I don't know, man. This really isn't my bag here. Honestly, I was surprised at how challenging the 3 different game modes were. And maybe I'm too old for this. And one final and very recently released bit of the Beetlejuice promotional push is an appearance as a playable fighter in Multiversus, a free-to-play Smash Bros. Style fighter featuring heaps of purchasable crossover characters from various cartoon and movie franchises. At least his moveset has some pretty cool movie references, from drawing a line with chalk, giant hammer hands, and even warping in a big sandworm. So there we have it. Those are all the Beetlejuice games I could dig up. I'm cautiously optimistic about the new movie, but it will be interesting to see where the franchise goes from here. Thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this one, you should also check out that video I made on every Gremlins game, another Warner Bros. Classic that had a surprising number of video game adaptations over the years. And we'll catch you next time.